It's no secret of mine that as far back as the beginning of this channel, I have always loved Thomas the Tank Engine. Over the past 10 years on this channel, I have loved making Thomas-related content for all to enjoy, and this is no exception. However, I have also grown along with the series and have witnessed it go through some rather dark times, such as the ever so popular Miller era, though I was relieved to see it come out strong during the now famous Brenner era. But sadly, with the recent reveal of the new reboot of the franchise, and since the start of the not very well received Big World Big Adventures thing, Thomas seems to be entering yet another dark age. And since it's Halloween at the time of this upload, the spookiest day of the year, I think it's a good time to go back and take a look at some true classic episodes that really made us shiver in our seats when we were kids. Also, keep in mind that this is my list, and it may not be in line with what you think. So feel free to let me know what episodes you think are the darkest in the comments below. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy some nostalgic, yet frightening memories with our little blue friend. Hey, I'm Rapid Reflex, and this is my top 5 darkest classic Thomas the Tank Engine episodes. Ghost Train. Ghost Train, to me, is more of your typical Halloween Thomas episode. It simply focuses on Percy telling the story of an engine who plunged off of a bridge into a gap and was never seen again. Percy says the ghost engine now haunts the line every year on the date of the accident. Sadly, Thomas and Toby don't believe him. And to make matters worse, Percy's driver admits that he just made up the story entirely. The little green engine is saddened until he ends up crashing into a cart of lime that was left on the tracks, which leaves him looking exactly like a ghost. It is then Percy and Toby come up with the idea to scare Thomas into thinking that the ghost train is actually real. And in the end, it actually works. Again, it's a typical Halloween story that fits well into the Thomas and Friends world. To me, what makes this episode stand out as dark is its creepy atmosphere with the fog everywhere and the unsettling soundtrack at the start. The nighttime sets also really make the spooky atmosphere come to life. The atmosphere just gives off a dark and unsettling tone for a good chunk of the episode, though not in a bad way by any means. I highly recommend you check this one out if you haven't. Escape. When going back to looking at the classic series, one of the most common dark themes of the show is the constant threat of modernization, the fear that one day all steam engines will finally be scrapped and replaced by diesels entirely. This in turn is why so many steam engines had come to Sodor. However, in the episode Escape, Douglas the Scottish twin is forced to face this threat head-on when he makes a nightly trip to a faraway part of the island where only diesels work. It's dangerous here and he wants to get out of there fast. However, when he hears a loud hissing sound, he comes across another steam engine named Oliver, who is trying to escape with his brake van towed. He has run out of coal and can't move. Douglas remembers how Edward saved his friend Trevor from scrap and decides that he should do the same for Oliver. However, before they can make it out, the foreman stops them from trying to escape. Douglas's driver tells the foreman that Oliver and Toad belong to them. While he is weary at first, the foreman eventually lets them go, and the two engines make their way back to safety, saving Oliver's life from the cutter's torch, and Oliver becoming the newest addition to the Sodor fleet. What is truly dark about this episode is seeing poor Oliver in a rather terrifying position. The ever-looming threat of steam engines being scrapped is portrayed very well here, and Douglas having to confront his own fear of being scrapped in order to save his new friend makes it all the more disturbing. But the entire episode isn't all down and gloomy. It has a wonderful ending with the introduction of one of the series' most popular characters. Haunted Henry. Now this one I definitely remember seeing as a kid. Haunted Henry is a classic. Much like with Ghost Train, this one is more of a typical Halloween episode, But there was something more to this episode that really kept me on the edge of my seat as a child. In this story, Henry has to take a slow goods train, and when they hear an owl hooting, Edward tells Henry that when an owl does so, a mist will roll in, and that it also means there's a ghost about. Henry shrugs it off like it's nothing and goes on about his journey. That is, until the mist eventually does roll in, as well as his driver and firemen noticing strange things about, such as an amber lamp, strange signs, red signals.
And there's a fogman's coat. But where is its owner?
Henry believes there's a ghost about, and his crew decide that it's too dangerous to keep going forward, so they decide to wait until another time. By the next night, they are told that the line is now safe to travel down, and that the viaduct was repaired. Henry, now at the back of the train, sets off on his journey once again. The trucks tease him at first for being scared. That all changes, however, when they see all of the strange signs, and it causes them to go into a panic. They force Henry to go faster as they crash through the closed crossing gates, and it all results in one of the best crash scenes from the entire series.
Henry braked hard, but the freight cars hit some of the rubble and plunged into the ravine.
Fortunately, Henry and his crew find out that their ghost is no ghost at all, but rather an ordinary fogman named Old Bailey. The signs turned out to be warnings about the landslide by the viaduct, in which Henry and his crew had ignored. Henry and his crew are thankful of him and forgive him by helping him to repair his old station. This episode had me on the edge of my seat the minute the dark atmosphere kicked in. Ghost stories are always met with mixed reactions, but Haunted Henry is always a story I and many others can definitely come back to. Duncan Gets Spooked. Oh man, do I love this one. This is a story that many people in the Thomas fandom have stated to be one of the best Thomas and Friends stories of all time. In this story, Peter, Sam, and Rusty are working together until a line of trucks breaks away from Peter Sam, and they end up falling off the side of the old iron bridge. Duncan takes delight in Peter Sam's dilemma and tells him the spirits of the trucks will come back to haunt him. Rusty decides to question Duncan's own fear of ghosts with a story of his own. He tells Duncan the story of an engine trying to get home one night, an engine that sadly met the same tragic fate as Peter Sam's trucks. Rusty then tells them that people have seen the engine trying to get home when the moon is full, but it never reaches the other side of the bridge. Duncan takes the story with a grain of salt, so Peter Sam's driver decides to play a trick on Duncan in order to scare him. Duncan's crew secretly agrees to take part in the act and will make it happen tomorrow night. In addition, throughout the next day, Duncan can't stop thinking about Rusty's story and grows increasingly nervous. He even wants to get home before it gets dark. However, they can't leave with their last train until after the sun has gone down. As Duncan travels down the line at night, he begins to feel worried and alone. And then when they reach the old iron bridge, everything changes. Duncan notices a pattern of flickering lights forming the shape of a steam engine, and then he hears a sudden splash in the river below, which turned out to be his driver throwing a rock from the cab, but Duncan was unaware. Duncan panics, thinking that the ghost engine has come to haunt him, and he runs, shouting for his crew to take him back. The spooked engine shuts his eyes tight when he reaches the safety of his shed. His driver and fireman jokingly ask him if he is scared, though Duncan only lies and says that he's asleep. However, when his crew isn't looking, he opens them, just to make sure that he isn't alone. Before our number one, I'd like to give one quick but interesting honorable mention. Grandpuff. Now, this episode is not really creepy or dark on the outside. However, when looking at this as an adult, there are two moments that stand out in a rather dark way. First up being the story for Smudger. an engine who was reckless too often. His punishment resulted in him being turned into a steam generator at the back of the shed. Already a dark piece of a story that is topped off when Duke tells us,
"He'll never move again."
This episode is only topped off as when the Mid-Sodor Railway is later forced to shut down and the engines are all sold off, except for Duke. The episode ends with Duke's driver and fireman leaving him locked up in a shed. Duke decides to go to sleep to pass the time, and time indeed does pass. The episode concludes on a cliffhanger with the audience, as well as the rest of the Sodor engines, wondering if anything happened to poor Duke after that. And finally, the number 1 darkest Thomas the Tank Engine episode. Stepney Gets Lost. This is an episode that has been stuck in the back of the minds of Thomas and Friends fans for generations. The events that take place here are rather shocking and may have been unexpected by many fans from before. When Stepney the Bluebell engine is called to do work away from home for a change of pace, he's delighted. After a long day of working with trucks, Stepney offers to take the last train on his way home. He bids Toby and Mavis farewell and sets off. By the time he delivers his last train, the sun has gone down and a thick fog is rolled in. The fog is so thick, in fact, that Stepney doesn't notice when he takes a wrong turn. Stepney then finds himself in the last place any steam engine would ever want to end up at a time like this: the scrapyards. When the Bluebell engine realizes his mistake, his crew leaves him to go look for help. Stepney is left all alone in a place that a steam engine dreads the most. However, his fears are even worsened when he is found by the 2 diesels who run the place, Ari and Bert. The 2 of them believe him to have been sentenced for scrap, and they take him away to the smelting shed, a room where a massive claw awaits to turn poor Stepney into bits as it inches closer and closer to him.
"This engine's not for scrapping!" The grabber wasn't listening.
Fortunately, right before the destruction can begin, the claw is turned off and Sir Topham Hatt appears before Stepney right in the nick of time, saving his life. Stepney breathes a sigh of relief as he is let go, and the episode ends with him puffing away into the night as he is safe from harm once again. The truly scariest part of this entire episode is how the story could have gone a whole different route had Sir Topham Hatt not been at the scrapyards that very night. This one story alone has sent chills down the many spines of Thomas fans for years, and it is truly the darkest tale to come out of the beloved children's series.
Bluebells forever!
Good evening. If you have enjoyed this presentation, be sure to press the thumbs up button to show support for the channel. To see more videos in the future, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell icon to be notified for every video upload. Thank you again for watching, and be sure to have a very happy Halloween.